Outside, it is -40. Polar night. There will be no sun for another 6 weeks. The wind from the Arctic lashes at a speed of 60 kilometers per hour. And inside a small mound, hidden in the snow-covered tundra, a fire is burning. A child sleeps on reindeer skins. A grandmother whispers an ancient song. A human being is alive, warm, and safe. This mound is not a mound. It is a house. It is called a goahti, and it is older than most of the civilizations we consider great. Now let's figure out how this is even possible. The Sami live in a place they themselves call Sápmi, the land of the Sami. It is a huge arc of land from the Norwegian coast in the west through Sweden and Finland to Russia's Kola Peninsula in the east. The area is more than 500,000 square kilometers. Winter here lasts 7 to 8 months. In the northernmost regions, the polar night can last 2 months. Temperatures regularly fall below -30, and during Arctic incursions to -40 and lower. The Gulf Stream makes Scandinavia warmer than Siberia at the same latitudes. But warmer than Siberia does not mean warm. It means deadly cold, but slightly less deadly than it could have been.
The Sami have lived here for millennia, since the retreat of the glacier. The first written document that can be associated with the Sami dates to 98 CE. The Roman historian Tacitus described the people of the Feni in fur clothing, on skis, hunters. Later researchers associate this description with the ancestors of the Sami. Before talking about construction, there is an important detail about the terms. The word goahti refers to a whole family of traditional dwellings. In Norwegian, gami, in Finnish, kota, in Swedish, kota. And here there is a distinction that needs to be understood. There are 2 types of Sami dwelling. Lavu is a portable conical tent, similar to the teepee of the indigenous peoples of America. A frame of poles, a covering of reindeer skins. Easy to take apart, easy to transport. For those who are constantly on the move. And the actual goahti is a larger, heavier, semi-stationary or fully stationary structure. It was built in places of long stops, in winter or summer camps. Some goahtis stood in one place for decades. The mountain Sami maintained 2 goahtis at the same time, one in the winter camp, the other in the summer camp, and migrated between them together with the reindeer herds. This is not homelessness, it is rational management of space.
At Mortensnes in Norway, archaeologists found the remains of 47 dwellings that were used from ancient times all the way to the 20th century. The oldest layers date to the Bronze Age, a millennia-long continuity of tradition in one place. Now, about what they built from. 3 main materials: birch, birch bark, and turf. The 4th is moss. No metal fastenings at all, only wood, bark, earth, and water. Birch in the subarctic tundra is almost the only deciduous tree in sufficient quantity. Flexible, strong, easy to work with. The Sami used it totally: the frame of the house, bark for waterproofing, utensils, skis, sleds. Birch was for the Sami what bamboo was for the peoples of Southeast Asia. Turf was cut directly from the surrounding bogs. This is not just earth, it is layers of compressed plant remains. Once dried and settled, turf blocks turn into an astonishing thermal insulator with billions of microvoids filled with air. Modern measurements show that turf is competitive with modern synthetic insulation materials, especially if you take into account that the layer in a goahti could reach 60 to 80 centimeters in thickness.
Moss was used as a natural sealant. It swells slightly when wet and perfectly fills the gaps between logs and rafters. Now, how this was built. First, the frame. 4 curved birch poles from 2 to 4 meters long are set up in the form of intersecting arches. A horizontal central pole is attached to them, the spine of the structure. Around them, about a dozen straight wall poles are added. All joints are only pegs or ropes made from reindeer sinew, not a single nail. The structure turns out elastic. It bends under the load of snow, but does not break. On the outside, thinner rods are laid along the frame, a double wall with an air gap, the first protection against the cold. Then, birch bark, in strips, vertically, like shingles. Each next one overlaps the previous one from bottom to top, so that water runs downward. Birch contains suberin, which does not let water penetrate through it for years. And finally, turf. The blocks were laid on the outside with the grassy side inward for better drying, in a brick pattern, with staggered joints, like stone masonry, layer by layer. Over time, the turf blocks sprouted and merged into a single monolithic mass. The structure literally grew together with the earth.
After a few seasons, the goahti really did resemble a small mound from the outside. That is exactly how it was described by travelers who did not know what to look for. Now, the physics. Why does this work at all at -40? At -40, a person without shelter dies quickly. To survive, it is necessary to retain the heat produced by the body, and the goahti does this through several mechanisms at once. Each one reinforces the other. Let us begin with the form. A dome-shaped structure has a minimal ratio of surface area to interior volume. Smaller surface area means lower heat loss. It is no coincidence that the igloo of the Inuit is also a dome. Norwegian ethnographer Guttorm Gessing, who studied Sami dwellings in the 1930s, noted that the goahti together with the igloo demonstrate impressive engineering perfection. The common feature of all the most efficient Arctic dwellings is a dome-shaped or ellipsoidal form. To the form is added layering. The goahti has at least 3 layers: wood, birch bark, and turf. Between each is an air gap. Air is one of the best natural thermal insulators, but only if it is still. The goahti creates multiple layers of exactly that, enclosed, still air. Turf, 60 to 80 centimeters thick, with very low thermal conductivity, reinforces this even more. Heat passes through it extremely slowly.
In the center burns the aran, a small fire. Smoke goes out through an opening in the roof, but the heat remains inside. A small amount of fire in a well-insulated space of 10 to 15 square meters is capable of maintaining plus 15 to 20 degrees, even when it is -40 outside. And one more effect that is rarely spoken about. The ground under a goahti where people live constantly never freezes completely. The soil accumulates heat and slowly gives it back, a passive heater without any moving parts. The floor was lined with reindeer skins in several layers, an additional thermal insulator and a soft bed at the same time. Now about the interior space. The area is 10 to 15 square meters. The height in the center is about 2 meters. In the center is the aran. Above it hangs a chain with a hook, on which a cauldron hangs. The space in the goahti is divided according to strict rules. The entrance is oriented so as to minimize the wind. On both sides of the entrance are storage areas. Sleeping places are along the side walls. The most sacred place is the boasho, the space behind the hearth opposite the entrance. No one enters there without permission. The shamanic drum was kept there. There, according to Sami beliefs, the spirits were present. Smoke is not a flaw of the structure, but a function. It naturally rises upward and goes out through the opening in the roof, without lingering at breathing level. In addition, it repels insects, and in the Sami summer, there are more mosquitoes and gnats than anywhere else in Europe.
For the Sami, the goahti is not just a physical shelter. It is a model of the universe. Every centimeter of space carries meaning. Several mother goddesses were connected with different parts of the house. Matarakka, mother from the beginning of all time, was associated with the underfloor space and was responsible for birth and death. Sarakka was connected with the hearth and the well-being of the family. Food offerings were made to her every day. The fire in the center was alive. You could not spit in its face, throw trash into it, or utter swear words. The fire hears. The shamanic drum was the holiest object in the home. When the Noidi, the Sami shaman, played it, he entered a trance and traveled through other worlds. On the skin of the drum, painted with alderbark juice, gods, animals, and celestial bodies were depicted. The center was the sun. The south was the side of summer and life. The north was the side of death. In the 18th century, the Norwegian and Swedish authorities began to destroy these drums en masse. The church considered them pagan. Only about 70 survived. In 2021, one of them, the drum of the Noidi Anders Poulsen, confiscated in 1692 and sent to Copenhagen, was returned to Sápmi after 329 years of separation.
Now, about mobility. The poles of the frame were taken apart and placed on sleds or tied to the sides of reindeer. The turf blocks were left in place or stacked in a pile. Upon return, the turf had already settled well and could be used again. In a new place, a goahti could be set up in a few hours. This made the Sami some of the most efficient cold climate nomads in the world. They transported not a tent, but an entire insulated house. Some goahtis in stationary winter camps stood in one place for 40 years or more. They became so deeply embedded in the ground that their remains are now identified by archaeologists through characteristic depressions in the landscape. But then assimilation came. At the beginning of the 19th century, the Scandinavian governments began a systematic policy of destroying Sami culture. In Norway, it was called fornorsking, Norwegianization. The goal was to completely transform the Sami into Norwegians in language, culture, and way of life. Children were taken from their parents and sent to boarding schools where it was forbidden to speak Sami. Violations were punished, sometimes with rods. One description of these schools says, some children did not understand a single word of what the teacher was saying because only Norwegian was spoken in the classroom. Sami place names were replaced with Norwegian ones. Traditional practices were persecuted. Shamanic drums were burned. Rights to fishing and pastures were restricted. This policy lasted more than 100 years. Formal changes began only in the 1950s to 1960s. In 1997, King Harald V of Norway gave an official apology. Despite everything, the language survived. Today there are about 10 Sami languages. The most widespread, Northern Sami, has between 15 and 25,000 speakers, and the status of an official language in certain municipalities of Norway, Sweden, and Finland. In northern Norway, there are places where goahtis were used as permanent housing right up until the 1960s, at a time when humanity had already entered space. A year after the last residents left, ethnographers found everything still in place: the aron in the center, reindeer skins on the floor, the remains of household items. Today, most Sami live in ordinary houses, but the goahti is not nostalgia. It is an applied science of survival, refined over millennia by people with deep knowledge of their land, their climate, and their materials. They did not have formulas of thermal conductivity, but they did have hundreds of generations of winter experience. One Norwegian architect said, Sami culture offers new ways of thinking about resources and materialism, about recycling and the reuse of things. The goahti is built from materials that, a year after disassembly, will return to the earth without a trace. No waste, no factories or trucks, only human hands and what is around. At -40, without grid heating, without thermoplastic panels, without architectural software. Just birch, bark, turf, moss, and millennia of human wisdom.